Ladies and gentlemen, Nicaragua is a country of wonders. It may be a poor country, but it is more than that. Today I set out to teach you about this country of splendor. From lush, vibrant green jungles and bright blue waters so clear you can see coral through them, to the amazing and humble cities, Nicaragua is a place to see. My goal is to showcase how ancient civilizations impacted Nicaragua today. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy Nicaragua. Nicaragua is an interconnected country. The geography affects culture, which affects the economy. Nicaragua lies between Costa Rica and Honduras. It also lies between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. It is the largest country in Central America, yet it is smaller than the state of Florida. Nicaragua has three main types of terrain: lowlands, highlands, and coastline. All have a certain tropical feel to them. The plants and animals have adapted to a tropical climate. Being along the ocean, most of the residents of the coastline rely on eating seafood. Most of the people of Nicaragua are Spanish. They are usually farmers or fishermen. The lowlands are prime for farming, so the farmers usually inhabit in that area. The lowlands are close to the coastline, so the farmers also can fish. The wives of farmers tend to stick with a calmer life by staying by the house and doing house chores. The children usually help with the farming if they don't go to school, but they do like playing soccer. Traditional Nicaraguan clothing was a long cotton shirt for the men and women, but the men would wear pants and the women would wear skirts. Due to the sun bearing down on the farmers, a straw hat was usually necessary. Today, Nicaraguans usually wear shorts, t-shirts, and skirts. Traditional costumes are only worn for ceremonies. The country is poor, so people own an average of 2, maybe 3 outfits. The economy in Nicaragua isn't sheer perfection, but it does work. The country is poor, and the GDP per capita is $5,400. The economy is a command economy. This is because the government tries to take an advantage of the poorness of the people. The farmers have to produce crops for the economy, and those with jobs have to meet a quota. Fortunately, the government recognizes the facts that Nicaraguans can't always pay taxes and bills, and so they are working toward lowering taxes, creating hope for the future. In light of the fact that the economy takes on a commanding role, the government has been running smoothly since 1979, but more on that later. The type of government is a representative democracy. It was a dictatorship temporarily, but the people of Nicaragua eventually regained the right to vote and have power. Today, the president is Daniel Ortega. He is working toward lowering taxes for the poorer people in the country. The government is currently split into 2 sides. The president and some others want to lower the taxes, while the rest of the government and the people who have been paying taxes think it is unfair to change taxes now. The people of Nicaragua that are poor actually don't want to change the taxes, because not being able to meet the taxes gives them a freebie. But if they lower taxes, they will have to start paying. Unfortunately, the president is currently winning the debate. Due to being poor, there is a high unemployment rate. As previously mentioned, there is a lot of farming in Nicaragua. The entirety of the economy is based on farming. The farmers produce a variety of crops for the government. Unfortunately for the farmers, if they want crops for their families, they have to buy them. The common crops are coffee, bananas, sugarcane, cotton, rice, corn, tobacco, sesame, soya, and beans, all of which the farmers have to give to the government and then buy if they want to eat. The farmers are allowed to occasionally keep a portion of their crops. As well as farming to eat, there is a lot of beef and seafood. The country of Nicaragua used to be home to a particularly famous ancient civilization, the Maya. The Maya were very ahead of their time with their own religion, language, way of education, and culture. The Maya were famous for creating their own calendar, the Mayan calendar. It consists of a total of 365 days, and the Mayans believed that everything that was in the calendar was true, and they should live their lives the way the gods wanted them to. The Maya were in Nicaragua when the Spaniards arrived, but their close descendants were. There were 3 main tribes, the Chorantango, the Nicaraguano, and the Chontal. These were all descendants within a century or 2 after the Mayas. The final Mayans lived in Nicaragua around 1450, and from there the original Mayans moved south to create their own tribes. Even though there were still Mayans around closer to Mexico, the tribes lived large in Nicaragua, taking use of the lush farmland and coasts rich with seafood. These tribes thrived, but little did they know things were about to change. 1502, Spaniards arrived in Nicaragua, coming south from Honduras. Because it was Columbus's 4th visit, the Europeans were armed with much more supplies than their first voyages. When they claimed the land, the tribes were freaked out, for they thought that the men on horseback were one creature. Immediately after they claimed the land, the Spaniards made the tribes slaves, at least those that hadn't fled. After their initial reaction, the tribes were angry. They had earned this land fair and square. The Nicaraguano were friends to war, so they started to challenge the taking over of their land. They prepared to fight many wars. They usually went a little something like this.
Attack! Sword. Ah!
There were many wars, so many that the tribes were ready to admit defeat. But they refused to give in, determined to resolve the issues. But Spain continued to send soldiers and supplies. They wanted the land. Finally, Spain won, and the tribes remained in Nicaragua as slaves. For centuries, Spain ruled over Nicaragua, and the population was mostly made up of Spaniards, and the lower class, aka slaves, were made up of the remains of the tribe descendants. Finally, on September 15, 1821, Nicaragua gained independence. It was a glorious day. The first president was actually the current president, Daniel Ortega. The country stopped being a dictatorship in 1979, so they elected him then, and he has been in charge since then. As you have heard before, the country of Nicaragua was a temporary dictatorship. In between the independence state and the dictatorship, Nicaragua didn't have a certain type of government. They usually had a king, kind of like a monarchy. But in 1939, a dictator, the Somoza dynasty, took over. There was a festival commemorating the end of this dictatorship. The Sandinista Revolution Festival commemorates a historical and inspiring event, the fall of the militarized Somoza family dictatorship. This family ruled over the country in a harsh way for more than 4 decades. The Somoza family allowed no rights for individuals and caused many people who could afford it to leave the country. The dynasty was overthrown after the National Sandinista Revolution, which took place when people from all sectors, workers, businessmen, peasants, and students, joined forces and tried to defeat the Somoza dynasty and the National Guard on July 19, 1979. But they weren't strong enough, so with the help of Paraguay, the dictator was assassinated. Paraguay and Nicaragua were enemies, so Paraguay assassinated the dictator to anger Nicaragua, but they ended up doing Nicaragua a favor. This was a great day, and Daniel Ortega was elected president. Now, Nicaragua is thriving with more hope for the future, so if you ever find yourself in Nicaragua, enjoy white beaches with soft sand underfoot, fine dining, mountainous trail riding, volcanic tours, and much more. But don't get too excited because Nicaragua isn't perfect. Nowadays, the population is made up of Spanish and tribe descendants. The mixed race percentage is always growing, but the population of the country holds onto its tribal and Spanish roots by including some of the tribal ceremonies in their religious practices. Thank you for listening, because now you know that the country of Nicaragua is always ready for you to visit.